Okay, the history of Israel again. This is part 6, and there's 7 parts. There's one more part after this, and this is from the birth of Christ to 630 A.D. So Jesus now comes into the world, born of a virgin, according to Isaiah 7:14, born in Bethlehem, as foretold in the Old Testament in Micah chapter 5, verse 2. Israel was offered the kingdom, and they rejected it as did their forefathers at Kadesh Barnea, who refused to go into the promised land. The apostles performed the sign miracles, and the kingdom was once again offered to Israel, but they again rejected it, and the sign miracles ceased. So Israel rejected Jesus and the kingdom, and so the kingdom was postponed until Israel returned once again to their Messiah, Jesus Christ. The church is now formed at this time by name. It is a called out assembly. The Bible identifies the church as a body, a bride, and a house, but never identifies it as the kingdom, as some attempt to identify it today. The nation of Israel will be restored to the land and inherit all the land promises, and Jesus, who is an Israelite, will establish a kingdom in Israel. He will rule and reign over all nations of the world from Jerusalem. And today, the people of Israel are being regathered in their land as God promised in the Old Testament. At the second coming, when all nations are gathered against Israel, Jesus Christ will return, and that all nations will be defeated, judged, and Jesus will then set up his kingdom. In the time between his first coming and his second coming, Christ promised to build the church. And today, over 2,000 years later, we see the Jews coming back into the land as promised in prophecy. And the nation of Israel was again established in 1948. When the Great Tribulation begins, Israel will accept the rule of the Antichrist, and the Antichrist will rule during the tribulation. But he cannot rule until there is a falling away from true Christianity. We have that falling away today, so the Antichrist can come at any time. After 3.5 years, the Antichrist will be revealed as the man of sin and turn against Israel. So in AD 66, the Jews revolted against Rome and defeated the pro-Roman civic leaders and the local Roman garrison. And this rebellion against Rome spread to many other cities in Judea. General Cistius, if I'm saying it right, was sent to put down the rebellion, and Cistius was a civil administrator with no military experience. He entered Judea and was defeated. Emperor Nero then sent his best general, Vespasian, to put down the rebellion. Vespasian, with his son Titus, entered Galilee and destroyed several of the cities. And then in AD 68, a revolt broke out in Rome, and the Emperor Nero committed suicide. And there was a civil war for 1 year. Vespasian then became the emperor of Rome. Vespasian sent Titus back to Judea to finish off the rebellion of the Jews. And in AD 70, Jerusalem fell, and the temple was burned, and the walls were leveled, fulfilling an earlier prophecy by Jesus in Matthew chapter 24, verses 1 through 2. A few of the Jews escaped and went to Masada, and were discovered 2 years later. When it was clear that they would be defeated, the Jews chose to commit suicide rather than being killed, raped, and put into slavery. Since Jerusalem fell in AD 70, the Jews have been scattered into many countries, only to come together as a nation about 2,000 years later in 1948. Through the years, they have been and still are persecuted everywhere, but have survived. One of the cities of the Roman Emperor Hadrian decided to rebuild was Jerusalem. In 130 AD, he built a temple to Jupiter on the side of the Temple of Solomon. As one can imagine, this did not go over well with the Jewish people. And in AD 132, a Jewish warrior arose who claimed to be the fulfillment of prophecy in Numbers chapter 24, verses 17 through 19. Rabbi Akiba accepted Bar Kokhba as Israel's Messiah. And there were many who joined with him in the revolt against Rome. However, the Roman general Severus was unable to subdue them in 135 AD and flayed Rabbi Akiba alive. Thousands of Jews were either killed, deported, or sold as slaves. Jerusalem was leveled to the ground, and the Jews were not allowed to enter their city. In an effort to eliminate the Jewish name and connection to the land of Israel, the Romans renamed Judea to Palestine, probably from the name of the Philistines. Some Jews were still able to live in the land, and there has been a Jewish presence in Palestine for over 3,000 years. And this was the last attempt by the Jews to take back the land of Israel, known today as Palestine, until 1948. Then, in the 3rd century AD, the Byzantine Empire replaced the Roman Empire in the eastern half of the Roman Empire. The Byzantine Empire was Christian in nature, and the Muslims were continually at war with them. It is during this time that Constantine the Great established his capital at Constantinople, or Byzantium. After the conversion of Constantine, Christianity spread rapidly. With Christians in control, the Jews were now persecuted by professing Christians. And during the Byzantine period of 325 to 614 AD, Jews were not allowed to visit Jerusalem except on the anniversary of the destruction of their temple. Then in 614 AD, the land of Israel, or Palestine, including Jerusalem, was conquered by Shoshros, who was a Persian warrior, and destroyed the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And the church was rebuilt shortly afterward. Jews were promised some relief from Christian persecution and a province to live in for their support. And for that reason, they supported the invasion by Shoshros, but the promises were never kept. Arabs commanded by Shoshros in general sacked Jerusalem and burnt to the ground many Christian churches and killed about 90,000 Christians. Shoshros did not keep his promise to the Jews, but they did have relief from Christian persecution for about 14 years. Shoshros II was blinded and killed by his own son in 628. And the Persians took Damascus in 613, Jerusalem in 614, and Egypt in 616. So Emperor Heraclius rebuilt the army, and in 621 AD began his march across Asia Minor to invade Persia. After the invasion of Jerusalem in 614 AD, there was friction between Shoshros and the Jews, and this resulted in many of the Palestinian Jews being deported to Persia, and this caused the Jews to support Heraclius. I can't pronounce some of these names properly. Anyway, the Persians finally made peace and restored the emperor's former territories. And in 630 AD, Heraclius took the city of Jerusalem and restored the cross to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And I thank you for listening.